Socialism. It seems to be on the up and up. We have democratic socialists. We have Western countries adopting socialist policies. And that's why I felt it was really important that I make this video and I share with you guys my one mental realization that helped me understand and finally take out this poison of socialism from my mind, because I too, believe it or not, I used to be pro the socialist communist agenda. However, this one mental realization made me realize it's all a joke. It's all a game. It makes no difference whatsoever. Welcome, everyone. This is Tuesday treesPhilosophies. This is where I go deeper on my philosophies, on culture, on society, from the point of view of trees. People always told me I go too deep. Well, I go deeper, baby. Anyways, let's get into it. So, socialism. It's something that has become more and more prevalent in our society. There's a lot of people that are pushing it in ways which we might not even seem as being obviously socialism, but nonetheless, it's being pushed. For example, we have certain Democratic candidates in the US that openly claim they're democratic socialists. And, they say, oh, it's not communism, it's socialism, whatever. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is government-controlled distribution of the industry. That's what it really comes down to. Whether you're talking about communism, socialism, it really comes down to everything is in the hands of the government. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit and explain to you why at one point I thought this was a great idea. I come from the post-Soviet Union. My parents grew up in the Soviet Union. So we were immigrants, eventually came to Canada, and naturally, Soviet Union collapsed. Things weren't the best, so that's why we immigrated. But nonetheless, when you grow up in that culture and you spent over 30 years there, of course, there's some nostalgia that's going to be associated with it, the good old years, right? So when I would speak to my parents about this, they always spoke of the good old days back in socialist Soviet Union where everybody had a job. There was no homeless people. You had vacation, at least 5 weeks of vacation. People that were laborers made more money than doctors and engineers. Wow. Sounds like a utopia, right? Well, let's see what happened. So naturally, when you're a child, when you're growing up, you take information from your parents and their worldview is passed on to you. And that's kind of what happened to me, I realized, was that their worldview, what they had grown up with, had been translated onto me. And it's not for better or for worse. It's just the nature of things, right? As parents, you learn, you go through the world, you age and you learn just certain things. And when you have a kid, you pass down those things to your kid, and it is what it is. So I have to realize that, these ideas that had been planted in my mind, were they actually my ideas, or were they ideas of my parents planted in there? Were they true to me and my values and who I am, or were they true to their values and they had simply implanted those onto me? Now, this is a question for specifically this subject, but this is something so fundamental. I can't underlie how important this is, that with almost every single one of our ideas, there is a high probability that they're not originally your ideas. They're somebody else's ideas that they planted inside of you, and you adopted them. You didn't think about it. You thought it sounded good, so you just took it in. Great. But there comes that point where we got to look ourselves in the mirror and say, what's what? And really dig deep. And if you're listening to this, you're the type of person that likes to dig deeper, because that's what I do. So let's get it. So what was the mental realization that eventually made me realize that all these beautiful stories of, no one without a job, everybody has a house, everybody has vacation, it sounds great. It sounds great. So naturally, you think, yeah, the government wants to take care of the people, right? So the people are in the interests of the government, so we should trust the government because they're working for us. So why wouldn't we give them the means in order to do the work that they have to do, because they are, at the end of the day, working for us, for the people, right? You're a public servant. You're working for the public. Okay, awesome. Sounds great in theory, right? They're working for us, and that's how it's going. However, we have to realize that this is what I realized. The one mental realization is that government, they are not only acting for your interests, for my interests, they are acting in their own self-interest. They are doing things that are not necessarily going to benefit the public, but they're going to benefit the government itself. And once I had this mental realization, wait, the government doesn't only do things that benefit the people, it also does things that benefit it. We have to remember is that's because it's an institution similar to education, our universities, healthcare, whatever it may be. It's an institution. Government is an institution. Religion is an institution. So that means that they are self-interested. That means that they need to preserve themselves. They are trying to preserve themselves. So that means that certain things that they do aren't always in the best interest of the people. And that's where the shift happened, right? Before, I was thinking, okay, let's let the government do what they need to do because they're doing it for the people. So why wouldn't we trust them? But then you realize that the things that they're doing aren't always for the benefit of the people, but rather for themselves or for their corporate buddies, which is tied to corporatism, not capitalism, which people have been mixing up. However, there's a big difference between corporatism, large corporations, getting buddy-buddy with large government. You see, big industry with big government come together, they screw over the common individual. So we don't want that, right? We want power to the people. So again, we have to realize that government is a self-interested actor. It is motivated not only by interests of the public, but its own self-interest. And I'm going to give you an example that's really clear that you'll understand. And what I bring up here is an example that has been true in almost all Western societies for probably even more than Western societies, but for many, many years. So nothing I'm saying here is controversial. Nothing I'm saying here is anything new, but maybe it's something that you hadn't really thought of. So government, let's say agencies within the government, right? They are given funding. So they're allocated funding and they're given money on a yearly basis based on the fiscal calendar, right? So every year they get a budget and this is how much you have to spend for your program, right? You get 10 million, 100 million, whatever. So what happens when we get to the end of that year and your program has not spent the money or the budget that was allocated to you? What's going to happen is there's going to be a big push at the end of the year if you have remaining funds in order to spend that money however you can. However you can. I can't make that clear enough. In any way, shape, and form, if you can spend that money to justify fitting it into your budget, you do it. Why? Because if you were allocated a certain budget, but you only spent, let's say, half of that budget, you know what they're going to do next year when they're giving you that budget? They're going to be looking at those numbers. They're going to say, okay, it looks like last year we gave you 10 million. You only spent 5 million. So this year, we're only going to give you 5 million for your program, right? So you've just had a reduction in the money for your program, which means maybe you got to let go of some people. Maybe you got to reshuffle things around, right? But this is fundamental to understand why self-preservation, keep on messing up that word for some reason. Self-preservation is fundamentally at play here. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about me in these situations. They're thinking about themselves. The institution is thinking about itself. How can it preserve itself? It's not thinking about you or me. I can't make that clear enough. When I had this mental realization, this is what broke me from the shackles, from this bullshit idea of utopia, from this idea that we can give all our powers to the government and they're the good guys that really care about us, that just want the best, right? So why wouldn't we give them the power in order to do what's good for us? But again, they are not only doing what's good for the people, they are doing what's good for themselves, for the institution, for preservation. That's fundamentally what it comes down to. And the example that I gave you about a program spending the money that's left over at the end, and frantically, just for the sake of spending that money, that's not unique to any specific country. That's not unique to Canada, to US, to Germany. They all do it. They're all guilty of it. All of them. So we got to realize that when we're asking the government to do things for us, they're not always going to be doing those things in the interest of the people. I can't emphasize that enough. And that is where we need to have boundaries. That is where we cannot give government unilateral power over everything, over industry, over healthcare, over energy, over water. Certain things, yes. Certain things, no. There's a social contract. There's boundaries. There's limits. I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole nother freaking, I don't know, you could write a whole dissertation on what the limits of government should be, right? I could make a whole nother series of videos on that, but that's not the point here. The point here is that government is self-motivated. They are not only acting in the interest of the people. I'm going to repeat this many times because I can't emphasize how important this is, because I didn't understand this at first. I really genuinely thought that, why wouldn't we trust them? Why wouldn't we trust the government? They care about the people. Like we're part of the same country. It's just like this mental blockade. Like, yeah, they care about us, right? Like we're doing this together. We're all in it. We hire them, we elect them, and they're going to be working for us. But the sad reality is much different from theory, which is often the case, right? We have theory and then we have reality. And unfortunately, reality just doesn't match the theory in this case. So that's my one mental realization that I wanted to share with you guys that I think is super critical. And with the current trend in society, it seems like socialism, these ideas are becoming more and more in vogue. And again, it's because they sound sexy. They sound great. Who wouldn't want 5 weeks, 6 weeks vacation? Who wouldn't want no homelessness? Who wouldn't want jobs for everyone? But we have to realize this is not the end game. This is not the end game. Please, if you like this video, give it a like and share it. Share it with as many people as you can, because I can't emphasize how important this subject is. There might be some kid out there that's on the fence on this subject. They're trying to figure it out, and this might be something that really helps them understand it, really helps them see things from a different perspective that they maybe didn't consider at first. Because I was in that position and I didn't consider these things at first. However, luckily through my experiences, through working in industry, in government, I've seen these things. And that's when the mental realization happened. So it's super important that I share it with you guys. There might be some kids out there that are toying with these ideas. They're trying to figure it out. And this might be the thing that helps them get freed from these shackles of these theoretical, utopian visions, ideas, and understand that the reality is just much grimmer than the theory. That's Tuesday's Trees Philosophies. Please share this video. I'll catch you guys soon. Peace.